several medicines. Talia and I talked about, has anyone in here watched the show Vikings on History Channel? But awesome. I mean, a lot of blood, but yeah, it's History Channel, it's good stuff. They talk about the gods quite a bit, specifically Odin and Valhalla. And I just want to show, this is just like 2.5 minutes. It's sort of like the best of Ragnar. And if you watch the show, you love Ragnar, and now you're a little bit sad. But I just wanted to get this out there as the beginnings of our introduction into Norse mythology, because I think Norse mythology is pretty awesome.
I always resented you. It's true. I made the boat that took you to fame. I made the boat that will take you to your heaven. I have something that will change everything. I believe there's a way to go west. I always dream of you.
What does that mean?
That means you're giving me your heart.
What am I to do now? I hate you for leaving me.
Damn you, Athelstan.
Power is always dangerous. It attracts the worst and corrupts the best. You must lead with your head, not with your heart. I promise you, my son, one day the whole world will know and feel my father Poland.
When everyone wanted you dead, I kept you alive! And this is how you repay my love! Who wants to be king?
I hate you, Ragnarok. I love you with all my heart.
I think Odin will ride like the wind and rescue you and take you to Valhalla where you belong, my own sweet Ragnar. And there we shall meet again.
All right, so we've got a couple of references there that we can build off of. All right, we've got, it's such a good show. And I think it's only season 5. You could catch up in a couple of weeks. Yeah, and it's all free on like basic cable. So, all right, so we've got a couple of jumping off points there that we're going to talk about. We heard Odin, we heard Valhalla. Sort of Norse mythology has become really popular with the moderately well-made Thor movies as of late. But if you watch the 3 Thor movies, if you were one of the few out there that did, you start to see this mythology coming through a little bit here and there. So let's just talk in general. I think I've got 10 or 12 slides. The words in bold are going to be the answers, and I'll put the descriptions on the exam. So, but let's just talk about generally what we're talking about. When we talk about Norse, we're talking about mostly Scandinavian countries, specifically Denmark and Norway. Finland and Sweden to a certain extent, but they're further east towards Russia. And Iceland eventually, because the Norse end up populating Iceland. We're talking time frame wise, I want you to know we're about 1000 AD, 950 to 1100. That's sort of the range we're talking about here. Put that in perspective, about 500 years prior to Columbus. So we're not talking turn of the millennium Romans or 1,000 years before that, the Greeks, or 3,000 years before that, the Egyptians. This is fairly relatively new, about 1,200 years ago. If you've ever been to Scandinavia, I have not. Any of you been to Scandinavia? Anything Sweden, Finland, Denmark? It's some of the most gorgeous places on the face of the earth. It is terrible to live in. There's almost no fertile soil. It's all rocky. It's all terrible. They're overpopulated there. You're fishermen, but only part of the year because it's cold all the time. So once, and the historical implications of the TV show Vikings are mostly true-ish. Ragnar was the first to sail, all right, to the west, and he sailed to England. And he found all these soft English people, and he stabbed them and took their gold. I mean, that's what it was. Hey, look at you. You're kind of weak, and you have all this fabulous gold. I'm going to hit you with an axe very, very hard and take it. And they would raid. That's how they got their wealth. And there were traders, and they still traded for things, but how they earned their keep was killing people and taking it. So we know that they were great sailors and great warriors, and it was harsh conditions. If you live in harsh conditions, you tend to grow up hard, right? That's sort of the environment shapes the person. So at the very bottom here, it says berserkers were animal pelt-wearing warriors who fought with crazy fury, which they imagined to be the spirit of Odin. We're going to talk about Odin a lot. Odin is the Zeus of Norse mythology. He is the top. Now, it's set up a little differently, so I want to get to that. When we talk about Norse men in general, that's only one aspect of all Norse mythology. It was a progressive society insofar as women could lead, right? Women could be warriors. Women could be earls, which was sort of like their local lord. And it was not so much like, it was no, hey, get in the kitchen and make me a sandwich. You're going to get a battle axe to the head. Like if you do that, so it was kind of interesting because you had a lot of equality. You can be anything you want if you're a woman. So we talked about the living conditions are frigid and cruel, and it was a dark outlook. Like, what are we going to do? It's always cold. It's rocky. There's not enough food. We have to fight for everything we've got. But that's where they were in life, and they didn't want to leave. Once they sort of like went to Iceland or England, we don't want this, and we still consider things home. So let's talk about Norse mythology in general. The world, according to the Norse, has 9 worlds. And the key to it all, the one thing that supports it all, is what they call the world tree. So if you're thinking about, right, the universe, their universe is this, right? The universe is Yggdrasil, although I'm not Norse, so that pronunciation may be a little off. Otherwise, you end up pronouncing everything like Travis Fimmel does in Vikings, and it's just very strange. But the world tree, there's 9 worlds built off of that, and one of those worlds is Midgard. Midgard is the home to us. All right, we live in Midgard. Midgard is where the humans live. You have Asgard, that's where the gods live. That's where Odin and Thor and Loki, they live. And then you've got all these other worlds. You've got a world called Jotunheim, which is the giants, and you're going to find that the giants and the gods are really on one side of each other. You're going to see it's going to be Odin and the gods versus Loki and the giants, and that is Ragnarok, and that's the end. Okay, and then you've got the dwarves, and the dwarves are just kind of, hey, if you ever need something built or made, hey, we need you to build a hammer, all right, forge a hammer for Thor. Okay, we'll do that. We need you to form an unbreakable girdle for to trap this wolf. Okay, we'll do that. And then below, you've got Niflheim. That's the land of the dead. So we've got some interesting parallels to what we sort of understand in general. We talk about heaven and hell. There's multiple worlds. And you've got the Rainbow Bridge, the Bifrost, which connects everything. And we'll find out there's one God who his job is to watch the Rainbow Bridge and wait for intruders, and that's what he does for eternity, right? That's Heimdall. But it's really interesting. Now, I got a better picture on the next slide here, but you can see that this is another rendering of what their worlds look like. Now, if you were a Viking, you only knew Midgard. You couldn't go anywhere else. You couldn't go to the land of the giants. You were stuck in Midgard, and you couldn't hope to really, like, Asgard, that's where the gods live. That's like living on Earth and going, well, you know what? I'm going to head up to heaven and check it out. You know, it wasn't anything. It's just you couldn't connect between the two unless you were a god. And then you've got, here's the world, think planets, right, of the giants and so on and so forth. And there were some connections between the two. So you've got these 9 different worlds. But we're going to focus almost primarily on Asgard, right, because that's where we see our major players. And major player number 1, the alpha, is Odin. Now, you'll sometimes see him written as Woden, because it's not all Scandinavian. If you're Germanic at all, sort of some of the Norse mythology started in Germany as well. He's the Allfather. Odin is everything. He is the first among everyone. Great thing about Odin is he's all about the thirst for knowledge. Odin is almost always pictured with ravens. And these 2 ravens work tirelessly for him. Right? They're always flying around the world bringing him news and information. Odin's the guy who can't stop learning. If I know everything, then I'm all powerful. He believed in knowledge as power. So much so that you've got Yggdrasil, right? It's the world tree, and along the base of the world tree runs a river. And that river has knowledge in it. And there's 3, you might call the Fates, or what they call the Norns, who guarded that knowledge. And in one of his journeys, Odin showed up in front of the Norns who were guarding this river of knowledge and says, I would like to drink from this river. And they said, well, certainly you can't do that. Even we know you're Odin and you're great and all powerful, but we can't allow you to drink for this river for free. We're going to have to take one of you, you'd have to give one of your eyes. And so Odin pulled out his own eye in order to drink from the river of knowledge. Right? The story goes, right, what's the meaning behind that? That no price is too great for knowledge. And that's according to Odin. I'll pull out one of my own eyes in order to learn more. Did all sorts of, we'll get back to Odin eventually, but I sort of want to just give you a taste of a few of the major players before we get to Ragnarok. Okay, holler out in the middle if you have questions or tangents or anything that you want to run off on. Odin's wife is Frigg, or Frigga. She's sort of underplayed in all of this. Yes, she is the queen. Yes, she has super respect, but she's not found in a lot of the tales. She's tied into her most favorite son, the son that she loves more than anything, which is Balder. And we're going to get into how Balder plays into all of this. But her job was to spin the clouds. Right? Remember we talked about the Greeks used mythology to explain science. Well, even now, I don't really understand what clouds are. Like, as a 42-year-old teacher, I don't understand clouds. They're there. You know, I guess rain comes from them, but how magic? I'm not totally sure. I've flown through a cloud. It still looks like cotton, and I think I can jump on it. So this is part of, she's spinning the clouds. We'll get to Balder in a second. Balder was like the golden boy, if you think Apollo, but everybody loved Balder. And Frigga loved Balder more than anything, and we'll get to that fact. It plays into the whole story. All right, so we've got Odin and Frigga. Here's Balder. Now, Balder's the key to all Norse mythology. He is the center point. He's the protagonist. It's not Thor. Thor's great because became a comic book character, right? They grabbed him because Thor's a badass. He spends his entire life fighting giants. That's all he ever did, so let's make him a comic book character. Balder dies. But he's the key to all of this. He's the tragic figure. Now, he was totally pure. He did not have an evil bone in his body. Literally, everyone loved Balder. Except for one. Loki. Loki, I know that when you watch like the Avengers and you watch the Thor movies, Tom Hiddleston does a great job playing Loki, but he's really sort of an evil dude when it comes to mythology. Let me give you the story of Balder. This you don't have to necessarily take notes on, but I like telling stories, certainly like this. Odin's the gainer of knowledge. Through his ravens, he hears that there's going to be an unbelievable death, like a death that will shatter the cosmos. So he hops on his steed and he heads down to the Norns and says, "Who is this going to be?" He goes in disguise. And the Norns, "It's going to be hilarious. It's Balder. Balder's going to die. We're setting up a feast right now. You won't believe it. I can't believe that one of the most beloved gods is going to die." And then he reveals his disguise, like, "Oh, hey, yeah, that's your son. Sorry, but he's totally going to die." So Odin runs back up to Asgard and tells Frigga, "Hey, you know our boy that everyone loves? He's going to die." So Frigga spends the next day talking to everything that exists and getting them to agree not to harm Balder. Every person, everything. Loki dons a disguise and goes and talks to Frigga and says, "You talk to everything?" And Frigga says, "Yeah, everything except the mistletoe. Because the mistletoe is mistletoe. Like that's not a thing. Like I'm not going to worry about mistletoe." "Oh, yeah, no, I wouldn't worry about mistletoe at all." So Loki's like, "Well, there's one thing that can harm Balder." So they're having this great big celebration that everything has agreed. Everything, rocks and arrows and everything, wolves, can't harm Balder. They agreed. So they're having a party and everyone's throwing stuff at Balder. And Balder's, "Ha ha ha, nothing can harm me. I can't die." Balder's half-brother is a guy named Hoder. And Loki, he's blind. But he's a great archer. And Loki goes to Hoder and goes, you're not having any fun? Yeah, I don't think it's that funny. He gives him a sprig of mistletoe that's been carved into an arrow. He goes, "Well, you should get in on this. Shoot this at Balder. It'll be funny." So Hoder gets up, boom, the sharpened mistletoe pierces Balder's heart. He dies in front of everyone. All right? So this is like this tragic, like if you're telling everything not to harm Balder, you would go ahead and if you talk to a million, you would still talk to the mistletoe. But that sort of plays into the whole mythology behind this. So Balder dies, which is the trigger point that ends up happening for Ragnarok. So hold on to Balder's death as we go forward. Okay? Here's everyone's favorite, Thor, the god of thunder. You'll be disappointed to know that Thor, while kind of really cool in Norse mythology, is not the be-all, end-all. His job was to fight the giants. In the end, all of the sort of Aesir are the gods, knew that Ragnarok was coming, and the giants will eventually kill them all. So Odin gave Thor a lot of magical implements, right? He had a magical girdle, like a belt, that doubled his strength. The dwarves forged Mjolnir for him, this magical hammer, right? All that great stuff. He's got the power of thunder and lightning. But he literally spends his days fighting giants. That's all he does. And he's constantly battling them. Just to keep them at bay. Listen, we're pretty sure Ragnarok is coming and it's going to be the end of the world, but you might as well go and fight them anyway and slow down the process. So that's really Thor's job in all of this. He's a warrior.
Sorry to bother.
No, that's okay.
Jeremy Silva, is he right?
He is not. I just saw him prior. He was looking.
Did you?
Yeah, he was looking to talk to somebody over at the station.
Yeah, I know. That's why I want to meet up with
Yeah.
you. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm out here. There's no chance of it, so we'll give that to him.
Thank you. Thor. Okay, Thor. I like Tyr. Tyr is incredibly interesting. He is the god of single combat. Thor fights overwhelming odds. Tyr's the duel master, and he is the god of justice and bravery. Now, we've got some interesting aspects here. I mentioned Loki. We'll get to Loki. Loki had 3 children, and I say children because one of them was a serpent and one of them was a wolf. You know something's wrong with a dude when he's having babies and they're coming out as wolves and snakes. But one of his children was Fenrir the wolf. And the prophecies had said that Fenrir was going to be involved in Ragnarok and that he's going to cause the death of someone incredibly important. So the gods said, well, we don't want him to run free if he's going to be this dangerous. We're going to keep him in Asgard and train him. Everyone's like, what are you talking about? It's a giant wolf that's going to be involved in the end of the world. So they had the dwarves build up a harness for this wolf. But the wolf was smart. He goes, listen, you're trying to trick me. You're going to put this harness on me. It's going to sap my strength, right? You're going to try and control me. I tell you what, I'll put the harness on, but someone's got to put their hand in my mouth. If I don't like what happens when this harness goes on, I'm taking that hand. So all the gods are like, well, you know what? We're good. You probably don't need the harness. Tyr steps up and goes, I'll do it. You put the harness on, I'll put my hand in his mouth. They harness Fenrir. It's called the binding of Fenrir. That's the myth. Fenrir goes, this is sapping my strength. Takes Tyr's hand. That's fine. I'll still fight. I don't need it. He's like Jaime Lannister like that. So I like Tyr because he's pure and brave and enjoys single combat. All right. Heimdall. If you watch the Thor movies, Heimdall is played by Idris Elba, the only black guy in Asgard. So you notice that's the guy. I mean, all of Scandinavia is white dudes, but let's give it. I love Idris Elba. Heimdall is important because he's the watchman. He's the guy who sits at the Rainbow Bridge and he's guarding it, waiting for Ragnarok. That's his job. Now they say that he only needs to sleep as much of a bird and he can see for hundreds of miles and he can hear a pin drop across the continent. Waiting and waiting. And when Heimdall blows his horn, Ragnarok starts. Ragnarok is the end of the world for the Norse. The day of doom, when that horn blows, it's on. So he's an important figure in the whole story here. Just a couple of more. But he's a minor guy. Heimdall is the guy who blows the horn. He's the watchman. Freya is the sort of secondary female character. Freya is akin to Aphrodite, if you will, the goddess of love and beauty. She's paired with this fabulous necklace she's always seen wearing. She's accused by Loki of sleeping with everyone in Asgard and Midgard, and she doesn't deny it. Yeah, she's also a battle goddess. Wait till you hear this. This is how strange Norse mythology can get sometimes. She rode a chariot pulled by cats into battle. All right, imagine a chariot, not horses, all right, not giant elk, cats. You can see right here, here's her chariot, pulled by cats into battle, and she was usually paired by a giant boar as she rode into battle. But this is Freya. Freya, if you watch Vikings, you'll see Lagertha will pray to Freya before battles, as she's sort of the shield maiden god. And they would pray to everyone. Well, a Viking doesn't mind dying. Right? If a Viking dies in battle, then that's it. The beautiful thing is, I think this is my next slide. Do I go to Loki or do I go to... All right, let's do Loki first. It says here, Loki's the doer of good and the doer of evil. Master trickster who is sometimes helpful and sometimes hurtful. That's only because he's a con man. You can't really stab someone in the back unless you're close to them, right? So he's got to be helpful and the doer of good in order to say, hey, everything's good? Yeah? Yeah, we're buddies, right? Boom. Okay? No one's going to let you get that close unless you're doing good things. So after the murder of Balder, Loki is shunned, right? That's it. He's the son of a god and a giant, and that sort of crossbreeding then allows him, he has 3 children, as I mentioned, and they're all going to play a role in Ragnarok. We know that Ragnarok's the end of the world. And let me give you, I jotted this down too. Here are Loki's 3 children. The serpent, Jormungand, who ends up killing Thor in Ragnarok. So one of his children kills Thor. We talked about Fenrir the wolf. He kills Odin. So 2 of his children kill Thor and Odin in Ragnarok. And his 3rd child, who is the death goddess, Hel, H-E-L, she's half corpse, half human. She's like half zombie. She guards the underworld and does not release Balder, which triggers Ragnarok. So Loki's children are the ones who really sort of put the nail in the coffin during Ragnarok, not to mention that Loki's the one who talked Hodor into killing Balder anyway. So it ends up being Loki and the giants versus Odin and the gods. And when Ragnarok comes, that's the end. So let's talk about last 2 slides. Last 2 slides are Valkyries and Ragnarok. So let's talk Valkyries. If you died in battle, your body would lay there, but the Valkyries would come down and they would take your soul, your essence, to Valhalla. Now, Valhalla is where everybody wants to be. That's where all the warriors are. You saw in the clip at the beginning, Lagertha saying, Odin is going to personally come down and take you to Valhalla, where we'll meet again. And if you die an honorable death, that's where you go. But Valhalla is just Odin's great hall, and he's gathering all the bravest warriors for the final battle. So it's part of Odin's plan. He knows the final battle's coming. If you die honorably in battle, your reward is you get to hang out in sort of the greatest place ever with all of your friends and continue to train to fight and kill for the final battle. So that's kind of like a really cool concept. For a warlike people, if you die honorably in battle, you'll be rewarded with, hey, my best friend died last year in battle. If I die this year, it's going to be a great reward because I'm going to see him again, and we're going to get to fight in the final battle together. So that's the whole idea behind sort of the Valkyries and the afterlife, if you will. Now everybody knows it's decreed that the end of the world is this day of doom, this Ragnarok. And they know that it's coming, but, we did the Norns. Skip them. I'm giants. We talked about the giants, okay? And I think we talked about the dwarves. So we've sort of talked about that already. I just want to wrap up with you guys here. Here's Ragnarok. They know it's coming. They know it's going to destroy the gods and the earth, but they fight against it no matter what. They're going to try everything they can do to prevent it. Maybe, even though it's prophesized and everything is coming true, maybe all their preparations will pay off in the end. It's Loki and his children with the giants versus the Aesir, and that's the final battle. The world tree, Yggdrasil, will burn, and then everything will be rebirthed. The moon and the sun destroyed. It's essentially the whole idea of the phoenix, right? Everything burns, and then from the ashes we start again. But the gods will not be part of it. It's not like all of a sudden we have Odin and Thor and Loki again. It's the end of everything, and then a fresh start in sort of a cycle. So the gods are worried. It's the only thing that they're worried about is Ragnarok. So what you have in Norse mythology, now this is an oversimplification of 1,000 years of stories. Don't forget, the Norse didn't write. Okay, they didn't write anything down. None of this was written. Eventually, travelers in the 1300s heard these stories and like, oh my God, these are the greatest stories ever. Tell me another story, I want to write it down. But they were never writing these stories down for hundreds and hundreds of years. It was all told orally. So once you have this person telling a story to this person telling a story to this person, the details get sort of muddled. But generally, this is sort of everything that goes along with it. Now, I think that it's kind of an interesting story because we've got a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we've got a whole bunch of sort of fantastic things that happen during it. I, for one, personally, like stories about war and battle. I dig that. So this is sort of perfect for me. Questions about anything that came up today? Sort of a lot of information. So here's how it's going to shake down. Tomorrow, you're going to walk in. I'm going to give you a quiz that's going to look overly huge. All right, it's going to have a whole bunch of stuff on it. But don't forget, even if it's got 40 questions on it, I'm still counting it out of 20. So the more stuff you can get right, the better. And then be thinking in your head, what do I want to dig deeper into? And I'll give you the assignment tomorrow, specifically what I'm looking for. Essentially, it's going to be a little detailed workup on one god from somewhere and one story, right? Relaying the details of one story. All right. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for bearing with me, even though I'm not totally on my game.